Welcome back to another episode of What Did the Patient Say with Doctors Dana and Lauren Brindisi, sisters and owners of Carolina Functional Neurology Center. We are bringing you inside information from real conversations we have with patients on a daily basis. We get asked the same questions and want to spread the truth on health and healing because we believe everyone deserves to know the answers.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of What Did the Patient Say with myself, Dr. Dana, and my sister, Dr. Lauren Brindisi with Carolina Functional Neurology Center. Today we're joined by one of our colleagues, Dr. Bianca Miret. She is a physician in our Raleigh office, and today is just about getting to know her. As the year goes on, she's going to be sharing some information with you guys. So Dr. Miret, tell the people what they want to hear. Just give us a little background about yourself. How did you get into this field? Where did you start? What did your undergrad look like? Things like that.
All right. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I went to undergraduate school at York University where I completed a Bachelor's of Science and I specialized honors in kinesiology and health science. And I also completed an honors thesis in my final year in clinical neuroscience, where I had the opportunity to perform my own research and my own data analysis and all of that. After that, moving on to grad school, I was actually quite confused at first on where I wanted to go. I explored various avenues, and the one that stayed with me the most was chiropractic. I love that you could see an array of patients in a simple day, from I think I saw a 2-week-old baby to a 90-year-old man, all within 6 hours. And to me, that was really what stuck with me, that I can make an impact amongst a huge population. At that time, applying to chiropractic school, I thought I had to leave the neurology behind, even though it was a huge passion of mine. And I was delighted to find out that I could do this and start my diplomate program while in chiropractic school. So within the first and second quarter, I actually completed my diplomate with the Carrick Institute at the same time as chiropractic school, and then completed that and then sat for my board this year.
Nice. So what did you do your research in undergrad?
More so movement. So the subjects had to perform a motor task with visual motor input. And then some had to do it without it. And I wanted to see who learned the best with visual motor input or with just without it.
And what does that mean? So like people who are listening understand what that entails.
So for instance, it was using a mouse and a keyboard and a computer screen. And they had to basically hit the targets on the screen. One was giving feedback where they were with the mouse. So like your cursor on your screen, and then one was not. And they were just given feedback on when they hit the target and when they didn't. So I wanted to see, I wanted to teach them how to do that over smooth transition or very quick. So like I would move the targets either slowly, like various degrees, or like within 10, 20 degrees from each other. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see which subjects did best and how did they learn through that. So it was actually really cool.
That's cool. And how'd they do?
They actually did pretty well. Both. I found learning more gradually was best, and obviously giving more feedback was best. They were pretty close because I think the task was just more simple. I think as it gets more complex, that changes. And it was in a very controlled setting. So it was like in an office space versus like learning how to perform a sports task or stuff. So I kind of learned or investigated like attribution of error with the cerebellum, like all of that. Like how does your brain learn and what's the best way for it to learn a motor task?
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I was going to say, so having also studied neuroscience in undergrad that was heavily research based, I feel like there's a lot of information that I learned then that as I transitioned into the clinical neuroscience program, it was really interesting to see how I could take what I learned more in the basic science realm and start applying it clinically. So that sounds like something very, very applicable. What other things, if you can think of something off the top of your head, maybe that you learned prior that you're using, or how you're using the research you did in clinic now?
I would say making things as controlled as possible. So every time a patient comes in, everything is at least to the most of my ability, everything is the same. And then the only thing that we're changing is maybe 1 or 2 variables. So it's very controlled in that regard. And then also very slow transitions. So my research kind of looked into what we call the attribution of error. So for instance, and the article that I'm thinking about in my head is like a golf swing. So like your brain, when you hit the golf ball, if it's windy, your brain's going to take that error to more so the environment than to itself. And so it won't actually learn as well about your swing versus if it was like a clear, perfect day. So I try to basically focus so that the brain wants to learn on itself, not so much the environment changing. So it doesn't attribute error and doesn't take in that learning as much. So that's kind of what I like to do with my treatment.
That's cool. How, you kind of mentioned like, you were kind of not sure what you wanted to do and like chiropractic stuck into your head. How did you get that first exposure? Like, were you a patient? Were you just shadowing? Like, what was your experience there?
I had gone down various avenues, like thinking about medical school, physical therapy, occupational therapy, even just more so research with neuroscience. And I'm a runner. And I was running by a chiropractic office, and I said, I had never actually been in one. I don't know what they do. And I was just very honest with the doctor. And I just said, I have no idea what, chiropractic is. Can you please, like, may I come shadow? Can I sit down and pick your brain and understand like what you do? And I had no idea what I was walking into, but I left with the biggest smile on my face. And I was very much convinced like that is exactly what I want to do. So,
yeah. I feel like I had a similar kind of experience going, in as a patient. I had somebody kind of be like, hey, you should look into this. And I was like, I don't think so. And then I went in as a patient and then ended up shadowing. And it was like, everything was so relaxed and calm. And it wasn't like this, you didn't feel like you were walking into a medical environment, but, everybody felt good. Everybody was, walking out feeling like, all right, like I got something done. They're like hugging the doctor. I'm like, I've never been in a situation where people are hugging their doctor before. This is kind of wild. I feel like we need to do our part in the world and like speak to students too. Like, I wish we had like a student following, because I feel like Lauren, I think you had a little bit different experience because you had chiropractic when you were a little bit younger. But like, I think there's so many people that don't know, just functionally, that there is a world out there outside of traditional medicine and prescribing medication and things like that. And I think, we've talked about a lot, like things are shifting. Like there are people more and more frequently that are looking for some sort of health care avenue that isn't requiring them to have medication. And it's like, people just don't know. And, when you're 18 years old, you don't know anyway. Like so many people don't know what they want to do, but I feel like we got to figure out how to do our due diligence to like expose the younger population to, what it is that we do, so that they at least have it as an option and they don't have to like, run by a practice and be like, oh, maybe I should think about that, even though I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's, putting more information out there is what we're trying to do. Definitely see more and more people in our profession doing that. So hopefully we can get the word out that there are other options out there. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Bianca, I had a question about, now you've transitioned and you're working in clinic, you're a diplomate now. What kind of things are you really enjoying treating in practice? Or what aspects and topics of clinical neuroscience really stand out to you that bring you joy?
I would say, I mean, we do see a lot of dysautonomia patients, and really treating those patients have opened my mind to functional medicine and the importance of, the metabolic side of the neurology, and how really you can't look at one without the other, and how important they are both to each other. And so it has been a challenge, and it's also been humbling, but it's also been really exciting to work with those individuals and learn from them and learn more and more about the brain and every system that the autonomic system involves with. In terms of the application of clinical neuroscience, I would say I take that and I just really make it creative. So that's something I really enjoy doing every day, that you can really, you understand, the pathways and the basics to an extent, you can then apply it. And that's where creativity just begins. And so I really enjoy being able to work, on a science level, but then also be creative with my patients and meet to where their limitations start and work and still build that.
Yeah. I feel like that aspect of what we do allows us to be so specific for our patients too, because it's like anything and everything that someone does is influencing their brain function, but it's like not everybody can't do anything and everything, right? So it kind of falls on us as the provider to be like, okay, well, if we can't go here, like where do we go and how do we make that as functional as possible for the patient? Like, I think that's one of the coolest things, especially as we get people towards like the end of their treatment plan. And now we're talking about, all right, what do you want to do from here, right? Like I had a patient who's a professor of statistics and he's like, I'm struggling with standing up and lecturing, right? I need to be able to do that for my job. And then we have other people who want to get back to running marathons, or other people who are just like, I just want to be able to sit upright and, be in the world, right? So it's like, it's such a big spectrum, but it's like, as we get to the end, and people are more functional and we can do some more things with them, it's very cool to kind of just apply it to specifically to their day-to-day and have them use some of our like therapy approaches to kind of help with that as well. So I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Had a few soccer balls flying at my head for soccer players, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I agree. It's
cool. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's no 9-to-5 desk job.
No.
Anything else that you can think of that you really want to tell our audience about you, or topics you're interested in talking about? Anything else?
I think as a practice in general, this kind of fits with us, but I want patients to know and other providers to know that, I'm here to listen. I'm an advocate for my patients, and obviously this goes with you guys too. But I'm an advocate for them. This is a place of healing. This is a place where they can be heard by their provider. And I'm a team player. So it is a team effort, that involves co-management, that involves and may possibly involving other providers. And I think there's a fear with that because, some things can maybe, you have to go to a whole new doctor and start all over again. And I like to explain to my patients that I'm there to help them navigate those steps if we are bringing on a new provider into their healing, and I'm an advocate for them through their health journey. And so even if their time with me has, come to an end and we're just kind of in maintenance, just making sure they're staying stable and maybe they want to do something else, that I'm still with them on that journey.
Yeah. I think that's an important piece of just functional healthcare in general, right? I don't think that's necessarily unique to our practice necessarily. I mean, I think some practices and people do it better than others, but I do feel like just in the functional realm, I feel like we just start our journey with patients in that capacity, right? Like we're always saying like, have that provider reach out to me, do all that stuff. Like I've never in my personal life had a doctor be like, well, just send me an email. It's like something that seems so simple. I've never been exposed to that type of treatment before. And I feel like that's just something that we do on a day-to-day basis, right? And it is, a lot of times when people end up in our office, it's like they've been everywhere. They've seen everybody. And to your point, they're like, a little hesitant, maybe a little nervous. They're like starting with another provider. And they're like, is this just another thing that I'm going to go through and then I got to go see somebody else or, whatever. And I feel like, everyone that ends up in our offices realizes very quickly, like that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
But almost all of our patients need some sort of co-management. Like very rarely are we the only provider that they're going to see, right? People that come into our office are very sick. It's not like we're getting, one acute small little injury that takes a couple days to improve and, we wrap an ankle and we send them on their way. It's just not the type of conditions that walk into our office and the people that we treat. So, I think that is, if people listening are kind of on the fence about just functional healthcare in general, I think that's something that they may not realize that they get almost no matter what. It's just a product of, I think, our education and, our upbringing through, our training and stuff like that, to just be the advocate, like be, what does Carrick always say? He's always like, we're in service to others, like that's our job. So I don't know. I agree with you 100%. And I think it's just really cool. And hopefully people who don't understand that aspect, right? Because to them, they're going to another doctor. To them, they're going to see somebody who has to like help them with their brain, which in general just seems scary. So, yeah. And I'm saying this because, I don't know how many people listen to our podcast or view our Instagram or whatever that are kind of like, this seems interesting and they have some good information out there, but I don't know, like, is that for me? Is that not for me or whatever? And it's like, we have so many people, not that they necessarily have to walk through our door, but hear our stuff and see our information. And they're like, you guys pushed me to go see somebody functional. And, we get messages like that a lot saying like, thank you. And, so I just feel like I always gotta like, speak to the ones that maybe, aren't our patients.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I think that's a huge part, is really just the passion and the service of other people, to be able to help people, especially in a way that maybe they haven't. I think that's the other piece of functional healthcare. A lot of times, obviously, this isn't the mainstream. So by the time patients get to us, they've been to so many different providers and have exhausted so many options. We just want people to know that we're here to provide them a service and be honest with them and give them everything we've got to try to help them in the situation that they are in. And I think that's huge, and that can be really, really comforting. I know it has been for me in the past as a patient to be able to, like Dana said, a provider just be like, yeah, shoot me an email or give you their cell phone number or something like that if they really need something on the weekends. And that's just so surprising, because especially in more traditional medicine, especially in these bigger hospital conglomerates, that's just not possible. I mean, there's just so many people that these doctors are seeing. This is just almost more concierge type medicine in some capacity, where you're able to get not just advice and objectives about what's going on with you, but person to person, right? That we're just people too, and we just want to help.
Yeah. And I think too, like, with all of our backgrounds being in chiropractic, it's, your patients kind of become like your family, right? It's just a different dynamic, just because of how, consistently in some phase of their care, we see them so regularly, right? Like whether, someone's doing general chiropractic care or you're going to see someone who does functional neurology, right? It's not like, all right, let's see you in 6 months and we'll rerun your labs and, we'll kind of go from there, right? It's like in the beginning, because by nature, if we're doing chiropractic or we're doing functional neurology or things like that, it's like we need to spend the time to create the plasticity. But with that comes like a relationship, it's like we really get to know our patients and vice versa, right? Like they know who we are as a human being, not just their provider that they see once a year to just have a checkup and things like that. Yeah. So I do feel like, we all have really similar stories in some capacity of like, we had this exposure to it and it was just different than like our other experiences of shadowing or volunteering or doing whatever at other practices. So I do feel like it does, drive a certain type of person to like even go into this profession in the first place, right? So like other people might not find that appeling, I don't know. But it seems like, and it'll be interesting when we do introduce everybody to Dr. Tyler, like where did her story lie? Is there like a common underlying theme in terms of like how we all got into this profession, and kind of ended up where we are. And now we all get to work together. And I feel like we all work really, really well together. And it's just like a cohesive storyline that just keeps going. So, I find that interesting.
Yeah, I think on that, if you're listening to this and either you or someone who this may resonate with, someone who's interested in healthcare, there are options out there. So again, just in other capacities, reach out to us. There are providers, all across the globe that do this type of work. We're always happy to have people, come into our clinics and shadow and see what we're doing. And I'm sure there's tons of other providers all over the place that are excited to do that too.
Yeah. I have one more like maybe closing thing that you can give to the people. Lauren and I did a podcast, I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago now on, our favorite books and things like that. And we've put some of that information out on Instagram, but we do also have a lot of people that reach out to us saying like, hey, if I want to learn more about this, what do you recommend? So what do you recommend in terms of books or websites or things like that if somebody asked you like, hey, that was very interesting, I want to learn more about what you do and how you help people, where would you send them? What do you think?
I think it depends on the patient and what they're
just a generic,
general.
Like what books do you like in neuroscience that you think other people would be interested in and stuff like that?
I think a great educational tool, for instance, migraines. I always recommend the Mastering Migraine book. It can be a little overwhelming at parts, and I just kind of explain that up front. And I'm like, don't worry about so much that neuro. That's where my knowledge is, but I can definitely talk to you about it. But really explaining like that comprehensive approach, especially with those types of patients who are usually on a lot of medications and they're seeing no way out of that. And it can be very scary for even a thought of, wow, I may be able to not be on this many medications to manage my pain. That book summarizes it really well. When I am working on more of a metabolic side of things.
So not just necessarily patients, doesn't have to be patients, but just like we have people that reach out to us on Instagram being like, this functional neurology seems cool. Yeah.
I really like Dr. Karazian's book, like Why Is My Brain Not Working?
Yeah.
That's my favorite. It's raw. It's to the point. It can be a little jarring, but it's very informative.
I think it's really well written. I don't think it's super sciencey. Like some of the other ones kind of get into things. Mm-hmm. I feel like I do recommend that a lot for patients when they're like, just trying to understand, what the heck is happening. Or I think that was one of our books that we recommended on our other podcasts as well, because it's just a good overview, I think. Because I think functional neurology is just such an abstract concept for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They're just like, I get it, but I don't get it,
Yep. I also like to provide research articles like on the 10 principles of neuroplasticity, just to kind of explain like why the treatment plan is created the way it is, like why, for how long, for how frequent, and why is that so important for their case and their brain, and in general, driving neuroplasticity in general. Like you said, sometimes it's hard to wrap your brain around like creating neuroplasticity if you're not trained in it, right? So I give them a really nice article about it. It just kind of explains like the 10 principles on how it does that. And then we just talk about it. Like, where is this coming into your treatment plan? Like, how specific are we getting? And I relate it back to them so that they understand that their treatment is targeted for them specifically and it's individualized.
That'd be something cool to share. Like maybe we could do a podcast again about that.
The 10 principles?
Yeah, that paper, and just kind of run through that for people. I think that would be really neat to kind of break it down and just give people a general overview, because I do think people, even if they listen to us on a monthly or weekly basis, I think until they go through it, until you really have to put yourself in a position where your brain's not working well and you've got to make a change, we've talked about this a lot. Like, we just take it for granted that happens all the time, until it's, happening to our detriment, and we've got to change it. So, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Bianca Miret, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Like we said, she's going to be sharing some more information with you guys as the year goes on. So this was just a nitty-gritty intro. So there will be more to come. Again, thank you guys for joining us. As always, like we say, if you guys have any specific topics or questions that you have, that's what's driving these videos and how we're putting this information out there, not only on our podcast, but also on our social media platforms. So follow, subscribe, and let us know what you guys want to learn about. And we will talk to you next month.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.